Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and it is Friday. That means it's time for the Friday conversation. And unfortunately, we're down to three. Yulene couldn't make it tonight, but we will press on without her. She'll be missed. So let's go around the room and just introduce everybody. Christopher, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, of course. I'm Christopher Warman. I am an author. I'm always weird to say that, but yes, I'm an author. I co-wrote Seasons of Albadone in the Eighth Chance series with my wife, Elon, who unfortunately could not make it today. She would have loved to, but she's quite busy. But that's who I am.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm RJ from RJ Reads. I changed the channel name last week. so, but yeah, I mainly talk about fantasy. I've started to uh, diverge a bit more. I've started reading sci-fi. I've also started reading historical fiction as well. So yeah, that's basically what I do. Um,
Nice.
but thank you so much, Steve, for having me on today. This is really cool.
Yeah. Thanks to both of you for joining me today. Fridays are always fun because we get to just kind of BS about books and random stuff. So, but
Yeah.
since Christopher's here, I wanted to ask both of you from from different perspectives on characters, because in Seasons of Albadone you have characters that usually are like side characters you usually don't get to know much of, but you become invested in them. So I wanted to ask Christopher how to write characters like that, how to get the reader invested, and of course, RJ, I want to ask you from a reader's perspective, what makes you get invested in a character?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an interesting question because um, I really like to get into my characters' heads, especially whenever I wrote Seasons of Albadone with my wife. As you said, we focused really on the smaller characters in a larger fantasy world. You know, one of the characters is a foreman who is digging for oil in the woods. Another character is this one of the people that works for the foreman. He's an alcoholic father. It's all these smaller characters that make up this larger fantasy world. So we really wanted to hone in and uh, try to um, break down what makes each of these characters tick. Obviously, with Handel, the alcoholic father, it was really fun fun, but in a dark way. It was really intriguing to get into that headspace of an alcoholic who blames everything but himself for his addiction and his problems. Where you can have a little bit of nuance that way. Um, yeah, I just really like to get into the characters' heads. Uh, Try to reveal without getting into too much spoilers. There's a few twists and turns in the series, and try to reveal those in this. I mean, in the book, try to reveal those twists through what the character doesn't know. Removing the information from the character. That's always really fun.
Mm.
Um, I don't like to write in a omniscient voice where you know everything that's going on. You know just as much as the characters do. So I always really like to write that way. As I was writing the book, as I was doing the first vomit draft pass, I was reading Assassin's Apprentice, and it was just kind of that inspiration of, oh my god, this is exactly the feeling that I want to convey with these characters. Is I don't know if either of you has read Robin Hobb and Farseer, but the first book in particular, it's from the first point of view, and it's written almost as like a diary. So we only know what the character knows, and we piece the information based on what the character gives us. So it's very much an unreliable narrator. Seasons of Albadone doesn't quite do that because it's written from the third person, but I try to convey that sort of unreliable narrator, especially with the chapters where you follow Handel, who's an alcoholic. He's pretty much the most unreliable narrator that I've ever written, and as unreliable as it gets, really. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much how I like to write, just really getting into the psyche and the issues that plague certain characters.
And RJ, what about you as a reader? What makes you get attached yourself to characters?
I would say this is actually quite interesting because I don't relate a lot to characters that much. Like on a personal or an emotional level, really. It takes like a really special character to get like really strong emotions out of me. So for some, like Christopher mentioned, Fitz from the Farseer trilogy, that would be an example of a character that brings those emotions out of you because you're in his head, with the first person, you know, and what gets me related more to characters, or what interests me more in characters, is, are they an interesting person? Are they, these, if they're more intriguing, that's what gets me more invested in the character. If they're complex and they have these deep emotions, and as well, um, the way that they interact with other characters as well. Like dialogue exchanges are one of my favorite parts of reading fantasy, is just seeing two characters interact and go against each other. So yeah, so that'd be something.
Yeah, even as a reader, I think that that's one of my favorite things, is especially when you see two different characters that, seemingly they're from two different worlds, especially whenever you have different POVs, and then finally you see those characters interact. Obviously, Song of Ice and Fire, Wheel of Time, these series do that really well. That's always like one of my favorite things, and I can't rate. I've written that in Seasons of Albadone on a very small scale, because obviously it takes place in a very small area. But I can't wait to get to write something like that on a bigger scale, where I have characters from different parts of the world interacting. For me, that's one of the best things about fantasy, is watching these characters interact, that you followed from different POVs. I love that.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah.
And how is it? What is it like writing from a unreliable narrator standpoint? Is that difficult?
Um, it is. It's actually, I mean, reading it is also difficult, because you're having to piece together exactly what's going on from different narrators, especially if you have different points of view. But writing it is quite hard as well, because what the greater picture is, what the story is, and you're slowly having to, remove the puzzle pieces, and deciding exactly you know, what the character is conveying to the audience, to the reader. I've had issues, especially with the current draft of the sequel to Seasons of Albadone that I've been writing, where I've had a character reveal too much, something that they wouldn't have known, for example. And then Elan, my wife and co-writer, she will point that out. She'll be like, "Hey, wait a minute, this character shouldn't know this." Um, so yeah, it's really just removing the puzzle pieces as you lay them down. Is I usually, with a first draft, I try to put down all the puzzle pieces, and then slowly I start to remove them and start to say, "Hey, wait a minute, this character shouldn't know this puzzle piece." And, I give it to another character. And, as a writer, as a reader, I really like putting puzzle pieces together. Kind of putting the story, or piecing the story together as I read it. So I try to do that as an author as well.
What about you, RJ? Do you like reading from that perspective, or is it? Um, do you, what do you think about that?
Um, for the unreliable narrator,
Mhm.
I kind of like that. It's definitely a lot more intriguing because you're second guessing everything that that a character is saying, and you don't know what's true, what's not. But then also on the other hand, sometimes you're not in the mood for that, and
Mhm.
you don't want to be constantly second guessing what characters are thinking or what characters are saying. So yeah, but there's something about reading that I love. You know, seeing that. Um, yeah.
What are some series currently in that caught your eye? What are you reading currently?
I'm reading. So currently reading book 4 of the Dandelion Dynasty by Ken
Oh,
Liu. So that's Speaking Bones. That's probably going to be like my favorite series that I've ever read. Like that series is just phenomenal.
that's
It
on the read
has
list.
like, yeah, like Wall of Storms is my favorite book. It just has everything that I love about fantasy in it. It has, the action is very much a more, rather than like a Joe Abercrombie or John Gwynne, where you're in the mud for a lot of it. It's a lot more tactical, and it's a lot more bird's eye view, and that's something that I find a bit more interesting when it comes to action. There's great political intrigue. The characters are so deep and complex and philosophical. Everything about Ken Liu's writing is just brilliant. The prose is, there's a certain magic to his prose that you just hear. He just writes a paragraph and you can dissect that paragraph. It's I could talk about Ken Liu all day. He's such a phenomenal writer. I haven't read his short. Well, I've read two of his short stories, The Paper Menagerie and Good Hunting, and he's a phenomenal short form writer as well, which I think is a lot harder to do. Like, he packs a punch in 15 pages of The Paper Menagerie, and I think he does that. He does that so well. I don't think there's authors that can't do that in like whole trilogies. He can pack as much emotion in 15 pages. It's phenomenal. It really is.
That's awesome. That's very promising. That's right on my TBR. I have the first book on my shelf ready to go for whenever the mood strikes me. I'm quite deep in Farseer right now, so it's very hard to move away from that at the moment.
Yeah. I would say about The Grace of Kings is that it's very different from what you get in the next three books. So Grace of Kings is very much a prologue to the actual story, and is very much inspired by Chinese history as well. So like the Han Dynasty, it takes a lot of inspiration from that. So it's a great series. It's a phenomenal series.
Yeah, it's up there.
Unfortunately, I'm as a reader, I started reading really late with fantasy. I've only been into the. I used to read fantasy as a kid. Lord of the Rings. I was really big into Aragon, that sort of stuff. Whenever I was a kid, but I took a really long break with reading. It wasn't really my thing until I want to say maybe 5 years ago, and I really had a lot to catch up on. I read all of like Wheel of Time, A Song of Ice and Fire, all that. What they would call recommended reading, which that's debatable, but or not recommend. I mean like required. Some people would call it required reading, which I think recommended is a better word. I don't believe anything is required, but I have been reading through everything. So at the moment, once I finish Farseer, I'm pretty much free. With the big series, I can pretty much read whatever I want, which is I can read whatever I want right now. But I still haven't read Stormlight. I still haven't read pretty much anything Brandon Sanderson. So I don't know if that's required or recommended.
Yeah,
makes two of us. Yeah, and then Alicia's here. I think there's her channel's coming soon. I think Alicia's channel is coming soon, so looking forward to that. And Drew's here. Happy Friday, everyone. Happy to see RJ on Friday Conversations.
Yeah.
And Derry says, I think the unreliable narrator is easier for parents to read. We've had kids come home from something and tell us a story, and we think, what really happened?
You got to piece together what happened at school from the shrugs and the silences.
Yeah.
What did you do at school? Nothing.
Yeah.
It's never nothing.
So, Christopher, what made you get into fantasy 5 years ago? What was it that made you decide I'm going to dive deep into this?
So this is actually, it's very strange. So while I was at work, I was actually, I would do like 2-hour commutes back and forth. It was horrible on the train, and I would just be on my phone playing games and all that. And then I don't know, someday I was watching a YouTube video, and strangely enough, it was Daniel Green was recommended, and it was like a review of a Wheel of Time book, which I'd never read at the time. and I just opened the video. He was like a really small creator at the time, not really doing much. And for some reason, thank the algorithm that got recommended to me. And I watched the video and I said, oh, that sounds cool. So I just bought the first book, Eye of the World, and I read it on the train, and I started to realize, oh, that's a much better use of my time. 4 hours a day spent on the train. I might as well get some reading out of the way. And so I just compiled a TBR of everything that r/fantasy would recommend on their, recommended reading lists. And so I just read through pretty much everything I could get my hands on. 5 years later, here I am, and my passion for fantasy writing has rekindled that way. So, I always thank booktubers, and I love to support booktubers because without them, I wouldn't have written, I wouldn't have read as much as I did. So,
to go from playing games on your phone during your commute to writing a book in about like that's it's quite an accomplishment.
Well, also, I mean, I hate to say this, but thank the pandemic for that too, because I did lose my job at the peak pandemic at the very beginning of 2020, and I didn't have a job for 9 months, and I had loose strains of a manuscript, random pieces of dialogue, whatever. And after a couple months of not working and just being home and gaming and reading and not really doing much else, I thought to myself, hey, it might be a while before I actually get a full-time job. If I always wanted to write something, I said, if not now, then when? So I just sat down and treated it like a 9 to 5. I literally just would wake up, make coffee, write for 5 to 6 hours nonstop, and that's how it happened.
Wow.
So sometimes there's something to be said about having the time to do it, because now that I actually do have a 9 to 5, it's in trying to write a sequel that's about double the size of Seasons of Albadone. It's tough. I don't have the time. I wish I really did.
Wow. What about you, RJ? Are you a writer or just a reader like me?
No, I couldn't write for shit. I'm just a reader. I got into fantasy only about 2 years ago, and again that would be the pandemic to blame for that. I had been a fan of like Harry Potter for years at that point. I'd started watching the films when I was like 4 or 5 years old, and then during the pandemic, I decided I wanted to get back into reading. I had read a few things. I had read like The Hunger Games when it was popular. I had read Maze Runner as well. So I decided I wanted to get into adult fantasy for some reason. I had seen a Daniel Green video. I'd heard about Wheel of Time, and other series like that. And the first series I decided to start was Mistborn because everyone was saying that was great series to start with. So I read The Final Empire, and the rest is history, as they say. It's been a great journey so far.
Yeah. How long ago did you start having a channel? Is it pretty recent?
I started in October of last year, but I was uploading like quite sporadically at that point. I think I've started uploading recently since like March of this year. That's when I've started to really, buckle down and try and upload videos on a somewhat regular basis. Because at the time I was just uploading whatever came to mind, and I was also very nervous about recording anything because I thought I was going to sound like an idiot. I mean, I kind of still do, but I'm more confident idiot.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing about recording yourself. I've done it a few times, and it's just, I hate it. I cannot stand to see myself, so I can never do anything like that.
Yeah, it's weird hearing your voice back for the first time. It's so weird.
Yeah, it is weird.
What would you say made you want to do booktube? Is it more of a like a writing like a reading journal, or is it like you want to recommend series to people, or doing like breakdowns? Like, what is your favorite part of the booktubing experience?
I would say it's originally what I wanted to do was I had an idea for videos that I would go over scenes from books. So like I have a video like the second video on my channel is about the ending of Royal Assassin, and it's essentially a breakdown of me just going over the events of what happened like in the last 60 pages of Royal Assassin. That's what I kind of wanted to do at the start because it was content that I wanted to see, but nobody was obviously making it. And then it kind of transitioned into just doing whatever, tags and reviews and stuff like that, because those videos took like a lot of effort because I would actually go back and reread like those sections so I could get, the feeling of reading it again. So in the hope that it would come out in the video. So.
Gotcha.
Um,
That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually have never seen. Very rarely do you see a channel really breaking down passages rather than whole books.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's challenging too because when you get that close and you zoom in like that, you have to know what you're talking. At least do your homework and be prepared for it. Than just more of a general, broad, thoughts on it.
Yeah, like I did. Another one that I did was on there's a chapter in Last Argument of Kings, the third book in the First Law trilogy, called The Circle. And amongst First Law fans, that's a very popular and very famous chapter from that trilogy. And I could have very easily gone to a wiki or something and looked up the events of what happened during the Circle chapter, but I actually wanted to go back and read it because, again, it would bring out, hopefully it would bring out, the feelings that you get, when you're reading the chapter, at least the feelings I had when I was reading it. So
That's awesome.
That's
Definitely encouraging me to check these videos out. At least once I First Law. I haven't read First Law yet, so I know that's kind of a must read.
Yeah, I thought it was okay. I wasn't. I mean, I thought it was good. I'm not as crazy about it, but I thought it was good.
Yeah.
How would you say, once again, as a new-ish reader, just about 5 years, my reading schedule and reading style, I'm very slow. I have a very hard time picturing things in my head, so I have to read and reread passages over and over again to actually make sense of them sometimes. So for me, especially going through these massive series like Wheel of Time, for example, took me a good 3 years to actually finish. And that's 14 books. That's quite long. And in between, I would intersplice smaller books just to retain my sanity because I can't I can't do that. But I just wanted to ask both of you as readers, how do you manage these bigger series? Do you are you a binger? Do you read through everything, or are you more of a mood reader? What catches your fancy online, you just pick up and read, or what's the method to your madness, I guess?
Good question. Go ahead, RJ.
Yeah. I'm very sporadic. Like I try to form a TBR and then the TBR gets thrown out the window like 2 days later and we're just reading whatever comes to mind. That's essentially what I do. Sometimes I binge series. Like I read The Dark Tower by Stephen King. I read that quite quickly. Like I think I read that in a couple of months, I think. And that's a 7-book series and some of those books they're not thin.
Yeah.
And for example, like the First Law trilogy, I think it took me 10 months to read that because I took like long breaks like in between those books. So mine is just all over the place. It's just whatever. I need to embrace being a mood reader, but I try to stick to TBR, but it never works ever.
TBRs are suggestions. They're not they're not set in stone.
Yeah, it's just they're not a promise. Just maybe it'll happen.
Yeah.
But for me, once I start a series, I try to finish it, like a book a month. Once I start a series, because otherwise I'll forget. Especially in fantasy, I'll forget who's who because of the names. And if I'm reading too many fantasy books back to back, then I get people mixed up. So I have to try and focus in on it. And I would like to do more mood reading, but I'm weird about that. I'd have to, once I start, if it's finished, I need to stick with it.
That's kind of how I am, especially, not being able to really picture people that well. I only go, I can only form an attachment of an image through a person's name. And if I read a series all at once, that name keeps getting hammered into my brain. So that really helps. I really wish I could do mood reading, but it's just not something that I can possibly do. But I really appreciate Realm of the Elderlings just because it's divided in trilogies. So I can, read a trilogy, read a couple other books, then read another trilogy, and that's been really great. Once I finished Live Ship, I think I read 3 standalone books, a couple literary classics, and I read Left Hand of Darkness, which is classic fantasy, sci-fi, and then back into Tawny Man trilogy. So I really appreciate that. It makes it easier to go through a series without having to read the entirety of the whole thing. I can take a little break in between.
Yeah, it is nice to have broken up a little bit. And Bailey Books and Sport had a question for RJ. Where on the island of Ireland is RJ from?
I'm from the small. It's a smaller town. It's called Ballymena in County Antrim. So I'm from Northern Ireland rather than the Republic. Also a fun fact. This is also the town that Liam Neeson grew up in. So that's a fun fact for people. So I live about 40 minutes about 40 minutes outside of Belfast, so which is the capital.
It's so Liam Neeson is so different because he was just like an actor who did like Star Wars and things like that, but he became an action movie star late in it was like his 60s or 50s or 60s. It's really strange that he took that turn.
It was very weird. No.
But people like lots of Liam quotes around you. Do people quote him a lot?
No, not really. He's not really a person that's talked about that much. We don't brag about Liam Neeson. I'm originally from like a small village about 20 minutes outside of here. So I moved here about 2 years ago. So
I feel like he's more of maybe an American action star, except he's originally from there, but he's an American action star.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and I'm glad he still kept the accent. Like that's how people from Ballymena sound.
And Eric said, I bet publishers and brewer distillers were sad to see the lockdown end. Yeah, I'm sure they were.
I mean, it was kind of a double-edged sword for publishers, just because in peak lockdown there was that that backup for paper and printing. They were printing books much slower, and the costs were quite high, just because there were less people working at the prints, and there was the backup of supplies like ink and paper. So it was actually quite difficult for them. I think publishers specifically probably enjoyed it. Brewers, distillers, I'm not sure why they would be sad. I think
people stayed home and
I think that, maybe that's what it is. Yeah, people drank more at home. Yeah. I don't know if that was the same in Northern Ireland, but in the U.S. probably people drank at home more than they did.
We're well known for our drinking. We drink a lot. That's a stereotype that's unfortunately very true. We do drink a lot. So, it is what it is.
I would say that's true for a lot of places, honestly. Like the stereotype isn't there for the U.S., but I'd say the U.S. drinks quite a bit as well.
Yeah, probably. And Alicia had a question, which is a really good question. Let me see. Let me go back up. Sorry. How do you get comfortable with filming yourself? I've been part of lives, and I'm more comfortable in that part than part of it. But when it comes to filming myself, I don't know what holds me back. OJ, what do
Yeah.
you think?
It's honestly, it's just doing it. It's just doing it over and over again. You know, the more you do it, the more you'll just get used to it. Like I feel like now I talk to my webcam as much, or probably more than most of my family members. So, um, honestly, is just repetition. It's just keep doing it, and eventually you'll just get comfortable with it, and it's second nature to you. You know,
Mhm.
it's no. I'm sorry I don't have like a longer answer to that, but you know, it's in my experience anyway.
Yeah.
It's you know that's how I got used to it.
And I think lives really help out, live streams,
Mm,
because you don't have the. I think it's easier to relax because you know you can't edit it out later. Because when you rely on it, because editing is nice because you can edit out all those mistakes and you can rephrase things on the fly. But when you know you don't have that, like now, you have to kind of be more careful with your words and kind of think things through a little bit more, kind of speak, because you can have editing kind of like as a crutch. It is hard to edit yourself at first because it seems weird
mm.
staring at yourself and all the weird noises and things all the stupid things you say. But but you just kind of it's one of those things where you just kind of let it go and just stop caring as much. It does take some
Mm.
time though, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, like I'm still a dumbass, so I just embrace it now. So
Yeah,
so if I say something dumb, you know what? It's out there. Don't care.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, you just have to get to that point where it's like, well, yeah, I said it, so you know, whatever.
Mm.
Yeah,
It's
all
fun.
the silly things.
I'd
It's
say with
funny to think
lives,
back on.
yeah, I'd say with lives, the benefit is that you can bounce off of each other as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mm.
Fill those silences and all that kind of stuff. I used to have this is a little bit of lore. I used to have a semi-successful music reviewing channel
Oh, wow.
that used to give me quite a bit of anxiety, and I ended up
Mm.
deleting it just
Hmm.
because it was years ago, and I just didn't like to stare at myself. The idea of being um, online that way really freaked me out. So it's not for me. I know it isn't. Now I just kind of do the occasional video. I have more of a meme parody channel. I've done some booktube parody videos and some random one-offs. I'm more comfortable with that just because the format is a little bit more jokey. I don't take myself very seriously, but as someone who professionally edited. I used to be a professional editor. I still kind of am, just on the side. But I used to actually that was used to be my full time job, and I used to edit vlogs and
Hmm.
promotional videos for other people, and it was a nightmare sifting through hours of just people just staring at the screen, cutting all the ums, and I just couldn't do it for myself. It's just not. So I mean, kudos. Booktubers really, they're brave.
Yeah. I'm excited. I didn't know. I didn't realize you had a music review channel.
Yeah, yeah. It was. Yeah, it was. It wasn't like huge. I had like I think 2K subs, so it was.
Hmm.
It was decent. And yeah, it kind of fell apart.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I used to watch all those, like in the rock and heavy metal scene. I used to watch like all those music reviewers back in the day. You know, because I was when I was getting really big into that. Um, those guys were helpful for the most part. Now I just don't care. I'll listen to
Mm.
whatever I want. Really.
Yeah,
Yep.
I still listen to a lot of music. I just part of it was also I just really didn't feel comfortable being a reviewer. While I used to be in a lot of bands as well, and we were trying to like put
Hmm.
out music. I didn't feel comfortable being a reviewer and
Hmm.
you know making music as well. It just didn't feel right. And even now, like as an author, I really don't feel comfortable ever doing a serious booktube channel where I'm reviewing other people's work. Um, I'd say, leave reviewing to reviewers kind of thing.
That would be tough, and I wonder about that too as an author. If you because if you read a book and you don't enjoy it for whatever reason, if it's just done writing, just not for you, then it must be a strange position to be in because you're kind of in that circle. So is that strange?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, knowing what's bad is very easy. You read something and it's bad. It's that's an easy call. But for me, for general, like I do have a Goodreads page, and I find it very hard to rate anything below a 4 star, just because it's I can write that. I'm reading even the worst books from the Wheel of Time series that are very often reviled. I just can't bring myself to hate them just because I can do it. It's hard as an author. Actually, there's a quote by I don't know if you're familiar with the duo. This is neither here nor there, but they're a music duo, 100 Gex. They do very wacky, very weird type of glitchy music. But one of the two, they had an interview with music review site Pitchfork, and they have this weird take on appreciating music, that anytime they listen to a song, they think to themselves, if a friend of mine said, "Hey, I made a song, can you listen to it?" And this was the song that they gave me, I'd probably be impressed, even if it was a song by like a awful pop song. If a friend of yours gives you a book, and it's usually a book you wouldn't like, but you read through it and you think to yourself, "Oh, my friend did this," it's still impressive. And that's kind of how I see, reviewing books and music as a creator, as an author, as a musician, is if a friend gave me this book, I just it wouldn't feel right to give it 1 or 2 stars. Just so I just don't. So I just don't review. I don't know if that means anything to you, but as an author, I find it very hard to be harsh.
No, it makes
Yeah.
sense, and it's to not be so critical, I guess. Yeah.
I always try to find something to love, but then again, I do have a few 1 and 2 star reviews on my Goodreads. One that's infamous. There was a guy in my neighborhood here in Los Angeles who left copies of his book on the windshield of every car
Wow.
in the neighborhood. And I'm talking, this was a hardback, like a big bulky hardback. He left these giant hardbacks on the windshield of cars, and it was on my car. And I picked it up and I said, okay, this is a free book. Let's see what it's like. It was very well packaged, very well bound. The cover was really interesting. And I read it, and it was probably the worst thing I've ever read in my life. I mean, what could I expect from a book I found on my car? Um, yeah, it was so interesting. Like, it was interesting because it was very philosophical, but it was also just kind of the sexual ravings of a boomer, and it was just very strange and very awkward. Um, I ended up looking into the guy. I don't want to like name him to, I don't want to give him any hate because he actually seems like a really interesting dude. But turns out that a few years ago, he tried to get one of his books into UCLA, the college here, and the library wouldn't allow it because they were just like, it has no merit whatsoever to be in our library. So what he did is he brought to UCLA campus boxes of his novel, like sealed boxes, and he placed them around the campus. And so the school called in a bomb threat. They thought they were
Wow.
under attack, because obviously if there's boxes all over the campus that are locked, that are taped up and nobody knows what they are, that seems very suspicious. So they called a bomb threat, and now I believe he is banned from campus. Um, but yeah, what an interesting guy. Not a good marketer, I guess.
Yeah.
Not a good way to market his book. I guess he went from placing unlabeled boxes on a campus to leaving his book on windshields of cars. So that's a step up, I guess.
I guess. So, did you read the whole book? Did you finish it?
No, but I want to at some point. But I read a good like 2/3 of it. That was one of the books that I would bring on the train, and after a while, I felt very uncomfortable having that book on the train with me just because it got very graphic and very uncomfortable.
Wow. And that kind of leads into Tall Guy Reads' comment. RJ is not afraid to DNF a book, and I appreciate that. That's definitely something I'm trying to improve on when I'm truly not enjoying something in the moment.
Yeah, that's what I'm known for, is DNFing. I don't DNF as much as people like joke about, but I'm not afraid to DNF a book. Like I did it with, I've done it with a lot of series. Like I've DNF like Wheel of Time and Malazan and Stormlight. I'm iffy on. Um, like, but it's also there's also a downside to it, is that sometimes you DNF a book like too early. Like I did it with Dragonbone Chair by Tad Williams. I DNF'd it about 200 something pages in, and I look back now and I was like, damn it, I should have, yeah, I shouldn't have DNF'd it. I regret DNFing that book, so I'm going to try again. Hopefully at some point this year, maybe towards the winter. But yeah, if you know anything about me, it's probably that I DNF a bunch. That's sort of the legacy I leave behind.
That's your legacy.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wish I could DNF. It saves you so much time and it makes you move on to the next thing that might be even better. Personally, I succumb to the, what is it called, the sunk cost fallacy, or
Yeah.
where if I'm 200 pages into a book and there are 300 pages more, I'll be like, well, maybe it'll get better, and I just keep going. I just so much cost, I put so much effort into that book. I might as well see it through. And most of the time, it doesn't pan out. It doesn't get better. But when it does, it's worth it. But no, I wish I could DNF. I just can't bring myself to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's tough because you think just one more chapter, maybe it'll get better.
Yeah,
Or maybe
maybe
something will
it'll-
happen. Yeah, it'll get better.
I've had a couple of those, and when it doesn't pan out, you finish and you're like, oh well, it was a book.
Yeah, it was a book.
Yeah. Sorry, I just want to appreciate AP's comment here. Is Valamina high? So he says that's a thing that we say here. It's kind of like how Canadians say "a." Like it's the same kind of thing. So like if you're in Ballymena, you always say "hi" at the end of every sentence. We have another town here. It's called Limavady, and everyone says "sir" at the end of every sentence.
Sure.
And people think it's like a joke, but it's like no. People from there genuinely say it like every other sentence. They'll say "sir" at the end of it. At the end of it. It's so funny.
I'm originally from southern Italy, and English is my second language. Actually, I moved to the U.S. when I was 17, and we actually did have a filler word in Taranto, where I'm from in southern Italy, and it's no. You just end your sentences with no all the time. You just end it that way. And so whenever I came to America and I was, actually speaking English as my first, or trying to speak it as my main language, I would still do that. I would still end with no, which in Oklahoma, where I moved, it was seen as very weird. And I had some friends make fun of me. They would say, oh, no, no. So I had to wean myself off of that. But yeah, that's a very common one down there. Yeah.
From Italy to Oklahoma, that's a big change.
Yeah, culture shock.
Yeah. What was the biggest change for you during that time? What was the biggest thing biggest adjustment you had to make?
I think walkability was one of the big things. I mean, in southern Italy, we used to hang out outside all the time and walk around the city and go to different places. But, that was really not a thing. It was just malls, I guess, at the time. That was the only place where you could actually walk. But you had to drive everywhere. Everything was, built for cars. I think that was a weird one. And then I guess high school was very interesting. I don't know if it's the same in Northern Ireland, but in Italy, whenever you go to a high school, you kind of pick almost like a major, where you pick an area of study. For example, for me, it was called technical high school, which with a major in coding. So a lot of my classes were built around coding and HTML, CSS, all that kind of stuff, Java. Um, Whenever and engineering, that was kind of a part of it as well. So we did a lot of like CAD and all that kind of good stuff, technical drawing. So even the math classes were built around that sort of stuff. Coming to the U.S., high schools are, for the most part, unless it's a private school, they're pretty general. So I went to high school in the U.S. and they were still like doing things that had done in middle school.
Mm.
So it was a little jarring. It made things a little easier. Like, oh, I've already done all this.
Yeah. It's interesting. What about the food? Was it a big difference with the food?
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah. That's got to be really tough
I mean,
too.
granted, my mom being Italian, she still made home cooked meals that were pretty great. But yeah, everything else, a lot of things we couldn't find in stores, things that now you can actually find pretty much everywhere in the U.S. Certain types of like cold cuts and cheeses, but when I moved to U.S. in 2007, you really could not find those.
Mm.
It was not a thing.
Yeesh. And Eric said Kroll. You know, little over your hand. And have you all read Kroll?
Mhm.
No.
I'm
Yeah.
not familiar.
I haven't read that one either, but I'll add it to my list because Eric said so. Spectre had a comment. I try to stick to a schedule of sorts, bounce between 3 or 4 books, try to read a chapter a week, different books and for different days, similar to watching a different TV show and movies each week. Yeah, that's really tough for me. A lot of respect for people who can do that. I can't do that.
I cannot do that.
No.
I only started doing that recently, but for a very specific reason. I was reading Fool's Errand on the train in public, and some scenes were happening without giving it too much away, and I had to close the book and not read anymore because I was like, I'm in public, I can't break down right now. So I started reading, a book in public. I have two books now, one for public, one for at home.
Nice.
I swore off Robin Hobb from in public reading. I can't do it.
Yeah, I've heard about Fool's Errand just by reputation
Yeah,
that
it's a tough
it's
read.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, as far as I can't do three full books. That's crazy. I think the most I did was three, and it was really really tough. But they were all very short books. It was during Spiff of '07. I don't know if either of you are familiar.
Hmm.
I know you might be,
Hmm.
Steve, uh, but I was Seasons of Albadone was in it, and I ended up being second place semifinalist. So as we got closer and closer and the circle closed down, I was like, okay, I got to read all these books that I'm in the same round with. So I picked up as many as I could, and I was going through them. And, that was actually pretty pleasant. I went through them pretty fast, and that's only because of the competition. I really wanted to see what books I was going head to head with. Um, but for more of a casual read, I can't do it. I can't read three, 4 books. That's crazy. Spectre, you're good job.
Yeah. What about you, RJ? Can you switch like that?
Um, no, not really. I try to stick to one book at a time. I've tried two or three, but it never works. I always usually focus on one and leave the other two to the side, and then it would take me a long time to get through stuff. So yeah, I tried to. I've started doing one on audio as well. I'm
Hmm.
trying to get into audio a bit more, so I can do one on physical and one on audio pretty pretty easily. I'm trying to get better at that. You know.
I
And
have a really hard time focusing on audio. I've tried a few. I think the narrator really needs to catch my attention. I did, what was it, fifth season on
Hmm.
audiobook, and that was great. Amazing,
Hmm.
amazing reader. Um, but I've had a few where I had a really hard time focusing, um, especially for fantasy when there's a lot of names and terminology. And
Hmm.
once again, I mean, fifth season isn't a good example of that. Having all that jargon, fantasy jargon thrown out like that on audio, and doesn't really make for the easiest read for me. But yeah, audio might not be my cup of tea.
Yeah, I get
That's
that.
tough.
I do want to try. I've heard really good things about the Lord of the Rings with Andy Serkis. I've heard great things about that reading. I might give it a go just because I'm already familiar with Lord of the Rings. I read them several times, so that might be an easier read.
Yeah, I hear lots of great things about that one. My whole family's been listening to that one, so everybody
Nice.
loves it. And Darius said, as far as stereotyping, one of New Zealand's iconic songs is "Bliss," with the lyrics "Drink yourself more bliss, forget about the last one, get yourself another."
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And RJ, you're too young to be allowed to say back in the day.
I'm too young. Apparently, I'm too young for that.
Wow, that back in the day comment really struck a chord with some people.
Yeah.
Spectre says, "Don't feel bad, RJ. I'm 47, still not allowed to say back in the day."
See, whenever I say back in the days, I was referred to whenever I was in Italy. So I'm like, back in the day, it was a different country. I can say that.
Probably feels like a lifetime ago. Really.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does.
Brandon, I'm 43 and I get made fun of from my teenagers when I use the phrase "back in the day." Thanks for dropping by, Chedia. Chedia's internet's acting weird. I'm going to leave you for tonight. Wish you all a lovely day and evening. And the Bald Booktuber, Dragonbone Chair was legitimately one of my favorite reads of the year.
Yeah, I keep hearing about Tad Williams. He's sort of considered the bridge between the classic Tolkien, Terry Brooks into more, Gurman and authors like that. That's what I hear. And from what I've read of him, he definitely feels like that. Definitely feels like a bridge between the two.
Yeah, I really want to read some Tad Williams. I've only heard good things. Pretty much most of my favorite booktubers that I've watched, they all rave about Tad Williams.
And, we had mentioned audiobooks a few minutes ago. How has the audiobook for Seasons of Albadone been doing, Christopher? Because I know that was a long process to put it together.
Oh my god, it was horrendous. I'm never doing it again. And that was for a short book. I mean, Seasons is about 60,000 words. It's a very short book. But yeah, because we were recording it, my wife was actually doing the reading for the female POV chapters, and then my friend Michael, he did a spectacular job with the male POVs. He did really well. I'm sure he struggled as well. It was his first time doing an audiobook. I reached out to him because it was something he always wanted to do, and he has an amazing voice. He's really good. And he did a great job. We struggled. I have a lot of recording equipment, but it's tough. It's really tough. A lot of takes, a lot of, whenever you do, you record yourself, not only, you're paying attention to what you're saying, but you're mostly paying attention to the visual of it as well. So like once you remove the visual and it's only voice, it's nightmarish. You're having to like remove background noise. You're trying to get the tone just right. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't recommend anyone do it on their own. I really don't. Even though my wife, she did an amazing job. She really, really nailed it. But it was a lot of work. It really, really was. I'm going to focus on just writing.
Yeah, I've tried reading a couple of short stories on the podcast, and even for just a couple of pages of a story, it takes forever because it's so tedious. So I have a lot of respect for people who do that. It's really, really tough.
Yeah, well, also, I mean, we would just do like 1 or 2 pages at a time because, I mean, you're doing them so many times and doing several takes, and by the end of 2 pages, your voice is fried, or her voice was fried. So we had to take it 2, 3 pages at a time, and the process is so slow. I'll leave it to the pros for the second book.
Yeah. And there's a hardback copy, right, of Seasons that's available now with a map. Is that right?
No, the hardback that was actually a little bit of an experiment.
Mm.
Amazon was actually offering for a little while hardback versions of the paperbacks, and it was kind of an experiment they were doing. I had it up for sale for a little while, and I was actually not very impressed with the binding, and so I took it off the store. I just didn't want to, provide a subpar product to people. I just didn't feel it was right, especially since it was so expensive to print. Currently, we have the second edition paperback. Just some updates on fonts, and the cover is slightly updated, and it does have a map. The map maker Dewey, he's on Twitter. He's pretty big in the map making community, and um, yeah, it was fantastic. He did a really good job.
And RJ, do you refer to maps when you're reading? Do you look back on the map?
Um, Not really. No, I don't. I try not to do that because I feel like it takes me out of the story. It can do that very easily. Um, but if I'm like usually I'll read the map beforehand, and then like if there's multiple countries, I can get the gist of the countries, and just so I know the names beforehand, so I'm not going, what the hell's that, you know, when you're reading it. So yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah,
And
I love maps for like bigger scale things, but
Mm,
personally, I mean, I always had a map that I kind of just drew it myself. It was very rudimentary that I referenced, but I mean, my first book, Seasons of Albadone, there
mhm.
was no reason really to have a map in there, just because it takes place in just a single town in a forest. So what's the point of having the big scale of the world and reference points to other things? But now that the second book is about to come out, uh, or we're finishing up the second book, it makes a little bit more sense to provide that map, just for the context of this takes place in a completely different area of the world. So I think it's important to have that context. But I like maps. I like to look at maps. I don't reference them as I'm reading. So I'm with you. I usually just open the book, look at the map for a couple minutes, and it's nice. I know that there are
Mm,
people that really love maps and really love referencing them. So that's why that's why I included it in the second edition. Um, Also, I really appreciate transparency with readers. I have reader polls every now and then with preferences on fonts, preferences on personally, I never reference, what are they called? The addendums at the end with pronunciation and specifications, all that kind of stuff. Ars Arcanum, like Brandon Sanderson does, where he has all this like magic stuff and runes and whatnot. I never reference those. I never even look at them. But I did have a poll for people, asking people if I included that in my book, would you actually reference it? And the vast majority wouldn't. I think most readers don't even look at those, honestly.
uh,
So I don't know. I just okay, keep it to map and story. Make it simple.
so I always wondered how much information do you have to bring to a map maker to make the map for your book? Is it a lot of detail you have to give them, or do they just fill in the blanks, or how does that whole process work?
So personally, I had a very detailed map. I love map making, not professionally, but I was as a kid, I always drew maps of everything. I used to copy like Middle Earth, like the maps of that. So I love that sort of stuff. So I did have a map to reference for my writing. That's what I gave to the map maker. And then what a map maker does is they transfer the very flat sort of map to a more realistic geography. So they add mountain ranges where I added mountains where it's important to have mountains, and then they'll add ranges and valleys and
Mm,
stuff like that where it makes sense geographically to have those. So
mm.
that's really what they bring. They bring a sort of realism to the world. They make it seem like it's geographically possible that this continent looks like this.
Interesting.
It's
Yeah.
it's a cool job. I wish it was that good.
Yeah, yeah, they look cool. Inspector had a question. How do you know when a book is safe for public reading?
I'm assuming this is for me to answer, but honestly, any reader can answer this as well. If a book is
Mm.
good enough to read, it's safe for public reading, and that seems like a simplistic answer, but like personally for Seasons of Albadone, I we went through three different editing passes ourselves, and it was sent out to readers. Once the readers read it and they barely have anything to say, most of the reader notes that we did receive were just a couple minor plot holes, or one of the big ones was I had currency, gold currency in the story, and some of the things that currency could purchase didn't really make sense based on other purchases that were made. So they wanted a little bit more specification of, oh, what is this currency worth in the world? So stuff like that, a little bit of world building stuff. But the moment our readers stop returning, very big character and story notes, that's when or grammar notes at all. That's when I start realizing, oh, okay, I think this is ready. So I think yeah, readers are the most important part of getting a story ready to go because they're your audience.
What about you, RJ? How do you know if you're reading a book? Do you know are there certain books you wouldn't read in public?
I don't know. I don't really read in public, to be honest. I just read at home basically. If I'm out in public, it's probably going to be an audiobook if I'm reading anything.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, so I don't know if I'd be out with Fool's Errand reading it from Reputation. So um, yeah, but I definitely wouldn't do that if I know it's a book. Like if it's the last book in a series or something like that, and I know it's probably going to get emotional, like I'm reading Speaking Bones now, and there's going to be some heavy emotions at the end of that book. So yeah.
Yeah, I actually think I misunderstood that question a little bit because Spectre actually just rephrased the question a little bit, and with your answer, RJ, I understand a little bit more what they meant. How do you know if it's ready to be read in public? Yeah,
Right.
I have no idea. I think you just kind of have to dive in. I think a lot of times people will, just from the general conversation of a series, like I should have known better. I've already cried several times before at both the Farseer trilogy and Live Ship. I should have known better than to read Fool's Errand in public. That's on me. But when it comes to series that not a lot of people have read, I actually in public I read it's a non-fantasy, non-fiction book called Radium Girls. I don't know if either of you are familiar with it. It's actually it's about it took I want to say it was like the 1930s, World War II. There were factories in the United States where these young women they would go and they would paint these what are they called like dials for airplanes, for aircraft, for submarines, and they would glow in the dark. And the paint that they used was it had a radium in it to glow in the dark. And at the time, the public didn't know of the problems with having radium exposure. So they were actually taught to basically they would do this thing where they would dip into the radium paint with their brushes, and then they would use their teeth to like make the paint or the brush really thin, the bristles of the brush, and then they would like paint these little dials, and pretty much like all of them died of radium poisoning, and there was like this whole like court case, and it was very heartbreaking, and I knew that it was a heavy subject matter, but not being a fiction book, I didn't realize exactly the emotional toll that it would take on me. So that was actually a really tough one to read in public. So you really just never know. You just kind of have to be prepared for anything.
Wow.
Be
What was the name
prepared
of that
for an
one?
emotional reaction. What's up?
What was the name of that one? I was going to look it
It's
up.
called Radium Girls. It's very excellent. The author did an amazing job just taking they intersplice pieces of diaries from these girls with legal proceedings and legal documents and kind of weave the story. And each one of these young women gets kind of her own chapter to shine, and you kind of get their backstory, and then eventually how they die. So it's very dark. It's very grim. Yeah, no, it's a pretty rough read, but very good, very good book.
And Critical Dragon is going to sleep. Good night, AP.
Yeah.
And Brandy said, "I love the idea of our kids having more of a focus in high school. We homeschooled our son until 15. At that point, he was able to go to community college and choose film, and now he is onto English."
That's
As
awesome.
someone who went to film school, I honestly I can't say which is the best choice.
Yeah,
Homeschool was
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Had a
He
good
did
time.
get he did get his certificate recently, so started English. Robin Miles is fantastic. She has all of the N.K. Jemisin audiobooks.
Oh yeah, she's amazing. She is so good.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
love her.
I didn't do Broken Earth on audio, but I heard a bit of her narration, and yeah, she was very, very good. If I'm going to reread the series, I'll probably do it on audio just to hear her narration.
Lots of love for the Andy Serkis version of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey,
that's
Shad.
that's a series I need to return to is Broken Earth. I only read the first book on audiobook, but I would really like to get through the rest.
Yeah. No, books 2 and 3 are they're pretty good. I don't think for me, they didn't live up to book 1, but they were still phenomenal. Like they're probably better than a lot of books out there. You know.
I think it would be hard to live up to a book like fifth season. Just the impact that it had, and
Mhm.
that the twist of the narrative voice by the end. That is, it's just mind blowing. I've never read anything like
Yeah.
that, and so yeah, I bet it was hard to follow that up.
Yeah.
And
Completely.
Legends of the Brave Bard said, "Mad props for the dedication. I tried to narrate my short stories personally on my YouTube channel. It was a disaster." That's really tough.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really tough. Derry checks maps, and so does Spectre. Having an idea of where people are in relation to where I've been, where they've been, or where they're going makes the story feel more real to me.
I get that.
Yeah.
Definitely get that. Yeah, one thing I'm trying to get into is not just world maps, and this is something that I'm actually working on currently for the second book. It's city map. The city that the second book takes place in is very integral. It's a big city with districts, and it's very integral to the story. Um, so I really want to make a city map. I think that'd be really cool. I know that series like Lies of Locke Lamora, they have a city map, and it looks really cool. Really want to do something like that.
Lots of people. Crystal says, "I check maps too. I feel it helps me connect to the world and understand where and how everything is connected." And Derry likes the pronunciation guides too.
And I never read a pronunciation guide.
I haven't either. Well, I did
It's-
a Malazan, but that's it.
I will pronounce something wrong until
Yeah.
I'm told otherwise, and then I'll keep
Yeah.
pronouncing it wrong because I'm too used to it.
Yeah. Like for Malazan, it was like because I called it Malazan for the longest time, and then you find and then there's people who get really annoyed about that about how you pronounce things, particularly in Malazan. And I was like, you know what? If the author doesn't care how you pronounce it, that's it. Like I'll pronounce it whatever. I just pronounce Malazan because I'm just used to it now. So
And
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we didn't think about until much later. We hired our audiobook narrator Michael, and we actually had to make a pronunciation guide for all the characters and all the places, just so he knew exactly what everything was called. And we actually missed one character, and he kind of went with it, and I was like, sure, why not? I do not care.
And, I love this. I love the username. Reading Rainbow says, "I love the maps in
Mhm.
Malazan quite a bit." Yeah,
Yeah.
I have referenced maps in Malazan because I was really confused.
Yeah, I haven't read Malazan, but I know it's pretty sprawling, right? It takes place in
Yeah.
very different locations, correct?
Yeah,
Hmm.
lots and
Yeah.
lots of characters,
I
but
bet that would help.
yeah, but the community, the Malazan community has been really great with helping us. We've had some live streams about discussing it, and all the people have been really helpful. So it helps out because it's confusing.
Yeah.
I'm still confused.
it's, it's a very confusing series.
Yeah. Yes. How many
So,
books did you get in, RJ, before you DNF'd?
I got to Midnight Tides. I started reading that, and I realized that I was starting to almost dread reading it. And then as soon as I realized that, I was like, it's over. So,
Yeah, you never want to feel like
but
that.
yeah, but I love like Dead House Gates. Like Dead House Gates, I
Mm.
genuinely think it's phenomenal. Like I love that book still, and even Gardens of the Moon, I really enjoyed that. Um, but yeah, but books 3 and 4, I think it started to slip, especially book 4. I wasn't a big fan of that outside of like part 1. Um, yeah, part 1 and part 4, but parts 2 and 3 were just nah. I couldn't do it.
Have you read Wheel of Time, RJ?
I've read again up to book 5.
Yeah,
my
I
opi- my
figured that.
opinions my opinions on Malazan and Wheel of Time are somewhat similar in the fact that I love the first 2 books. Book 3 and 4 it started to slip, and book 5 I was done. So
Okay,
it
because
follows a
I feel like
very similar
I feel
pattern.
like early Wheel of Time 4 and 5 might be my favorites actually, and then after that is where it started to lose me a little bit. I was like,
Mm.
no, I just got to keep reading because I know they get good again, and they did. 11 and 12 are some of my favorite fantasy books ever.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
Scott the Bald Booktuber said Queen Hall is safe for me to read in public, but that's only because I have a black heart. I am soulless. So
I just,
speaking
Good.
I,
of
I feel that, Scott.
yeah,
I
so speaking of Wheel of Time, and last time we talked, it's been almost a year, I think. Or no, it's been about 9 months or so, Christopher. Last time we talked,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
and
it's been a little while.
and we talked about a little bit of the Wheel of Time adaptation. I wondered how did you feel about it now that its first season's over?
Oh, this is gonna be controversial. I'm just kidding. I actually was, very happy to be invited to the premiere when it premiered here in LA. I watched it on the big screen, the first 2 episodes, and that was a really good experience just because it was, a lot of fans. The excitement was very high. Um, then it came out on TV. I watched it with my wife, and she actually doesn't know much about the Wheel of Time. She didn't read the series, and she actually really enjoyed um, um, the TV show. As as someone who read the books and actually finished A Memory of Light. Wow, I almost forgot the title. I finished the final book, I think a couple months before the series aired, um, and I thought there were really good things that the TV series changed, but there are other things that I really missed. I think one of my favorite parts of the first book in particular is um, just how much the main characters are referred to as like country bumpkins. They're
Hmm.
they're clueless about the world, and I almost felt like the series made them a little too cool. They're not as lame as I wanted them to be, because like I don't know, they're so lame in the first book, really, especially on reread, and you can compare them to where they end up and how badass they are by the end. But if you start your series with the characters being badass already, it's really hard to go up from there. And yeah, I think that's my biggest criticism.
Hmm. Did you watch that adaptation, RJ? Did you watch
Hmm.
the? Yeah.
I did, yeah. I was I thought it was okay. Like I enjoyed a lot of it, apart from episode 8. Like most people, I thought this is a dumb way to end it, but whatever. But I enjoyed it. Like episode 7, I really enjoyed as well. For some reason, I kind of enjoyed that episode. But overall, like I was I was fine on it. I'm going to watch season 2 because I get naturally excited for adaptations anyway. So like when Hunger Games came out, I had read the books before the films had come out, so I was like very excited for those films. And Maze Runner was the same. The last few Harry Potter books as well. So I just get naturally excited by adaptations.
At the end of the day, the more fantasy TV is good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I just love fantasy TV.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of it, so it's when we get something, it's always exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And our friend Johanna's here. Hope you're having they've been traveling lately, so thanks for hopping in.
Hey, Joanna. I love Joanna. She's so good.
Yeah,
she's brilliant.
Yeah, she's one of the reasons I decided to dive in head first into that series, just because her and Philip Chase they're really passionate about it. It's like, oh, I want to see what all the fuss is about.
Yeah.
Are either of you excited about the new Lord of the Rings adaptation? Speaking of adaptations,
yeah, I'm excited for it. I think the big thing is that it's not directly tied to like a book, really. So they have a lot more room to play around with for Rings of Power. So I'm cautiously optimistic about it.
Yeah, same. I mean, once again, the more the merrier for fantasy adaptations. But yeah, I think it looks good. What they've shown so far, the teaser that dropped today was really fantastic. Honestly, I love the way the orcs look. The world looks really fleshed out and really well made. It looks very quintessential fantasy without borrowing too much from the Peter Jackson films, and which I appreciated. They're trying to do their own thing while keeping that sort of spirit alive, that high fantasy spirit alive. Yeah, I'm very optimistic about it. I think it'll be pretty good.
The look of the orcs was one of the things that appeals to me because it wasn't a bunch of CGI. It seems a little bit more practical, which made the orcs look better. Darius said, I like seeing adaptations too, but the excitement has turned now to worry the older I've gotten and the more adaptations I've seen.
Yeah, I feel like I might be starting to go that way as well. But I'm going to try and keep the excitement for as long as I can. So.
Yeah, especially with it's not even a very recent phenomenon, but there have been many series more recently than ever. But even Hobb has done it. Even Erickson has done it, where the writing style is a little bit hard to adapt. I just can't see, Elderlings adaptation just because of that first person point of view and that unreliable narrator. We're in Fitz's head so much that I don't think it would translate very well on screen. You lose a lot of personality, and by what I know about Malazan, and how sprawling it is and how poetic it is, I just that's another adaptation I just don't see happening. And I know that there are a lot of books, especially in the independent scene, but even some bigger titles that I don't know how they would go about that. Something like the 5th season, for example. I know that there are talks of adapting that, but I don't see how that could be possible just based on the way that the narration is in the first book. And part of the appeal and the twist of that book is the narration itself. The fact that it switches tone of voice. I don't see how that could be adapted.
Yeah, I definitely think I think it would actually be easier to adapt Malazan than it would Farseer. I don't think Malazan would be easy to adapt either, but I think you could get a better adaptation out of Malazan than you could Farseer. I think if you try to adapt it, you would lose the heart of the series. I think if you didn't have like internal monologues like on screen, which just doesn't work. When it comes to TV.
Darius said Hobbs Underlings I don't think could work, but just the Life Ships trilogy could.
Oh, Life Ship could work.
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, once again, that's the non-first person point of view trilogy, so it would it could work. It's a little
Yeah.
bit less personal.
Reading Rimbro says, I'm always disappointed with adaptations when I read the book first. When I watch the adaptation first, it's not so bad. Then usually the book only gets better.
I think I can agree with that. I
Yeah.
think had I read A Song of Ice and Fire before watching Game of Thrones, I'd be a little disappointed. Maybe not with the first season, but because I mean the first season is as close an adaptation as it gets. But yeah, I think I probably enjoyed the series more having read it after.
Mm.
What about you, RJ? Do you get disappointed when you read the book first?
No, I'm the opposite. I kind of get disappointed when I see the film first. I wanted to read Dune before I seen the film, but that didn't happen. But I'm lucky enough that it's like it's a, you know, the book is it's two films, just for the first book. So I still have time to read to read Dune before at least part two comes out. So
Yeah, I think we're probably a couple years out.
I think so. So we've got plenty of time anyway.
Yeah, those movies take a while to make.
Mm.
Drona says, I thought Neil Gaiman's books, Coraline and Stardust, were better on screen.
100% agree with that.
Yeah, I've only ever seen Coraline. I think I seen the film when it came out, um, around about that time. I didn't know it was based on a book until like last year, when Baron from Your Brain on Books, his first video was a review of Coraline. So I didn't know it was a book until until then.
Yeah, I think Stardust did to me what you were speaking of, RJ, where I actually watched the film first and then read the book.
Mhm.
I hated the book. I thought the book was garbage. It was boring. It was, yeah,
Yeah.
did not like it. And I know a lot of people love Stardust, so I'm sorry, but it just wasn't my cup of tea.
Yeah.
But the film is great. I love the film.
Yeah, I need to read Neil Gaiman. I haven't read any of him yet. I need to read. Like, I'm very interested in reading Ocean at the End of the Lane,
Hmm.
and what's the other one called? Neverwhere. I think that's the other one. Those are the two I'm most interested in. Sorry, Norse mythology as well.
I loved
I've heard that's a really good one.
I loved Sandman. I read Sandman. That was
Hmm.
it's great.
Yeah.
The art style is fantastic. Do either of you read a lot of graphic novels or comics?
I used to.
No.
I started reading too many
That's
thick
a
fantasy
whole other
books.
beast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some great books out there. Some great independent books.
Yeah. I can't seem to get into graphic novels or manga sometimes, but I don't know. It's just something about that medium. I can't really connect with it as easily as I do books. So um,
Did you
Yeah.
read oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I understand what you would say that it is a little harder to connect to something like that. That it's two mediums in one. It's art and it's writing. And yeah, a lot of times I have to really slow myself down if I'm reading manga, especially. I really need to like take my time and soak in the panels. Otherwise, I really don't get anything out of it.
Did you read Invincible, Christopher?
I did not read Invincible. No, I've seen the show.
Yeah. What did you think about the show?
Oh, I loved it. It was awesome.
Yeah. I read the book, but haven't seen the show. So curious.
I know that the show only adapts like barely like 5% of the whole series. Not
Yeah,
even.
hopefully it continues. I'm not sure if it is or not.
yeah. No, sorry. The only no, I have read. I forgot about this. I actually have read a graphic novel, The Walking Dead. I've read
Mm.
part of that. It was because I was such a big fan of the TV show at the time. It was somewhat easier to connect with, because I had the idea, I had the TV show. So, but I actually really did enjoy you know, the comics, or at least the first compendium
Hmm.
was the one that I read. So,
Are you a Grant Morrison fan, Christopher?
No, not really. Well, I haven't read much of his stuff. I read a lot of Alan Moore,
Oh,
more
yeah.
than, yeah, but yeah, not much Grant Morrison.
Yeah, gaming has a bunch of adaptations. And the Sandman show starts August 5th and looks amazing.
Oh yeah,
That
that's true.
that
That is coming
yeah, that
out.
wonder how that's going to be to adapt. That must be kind of tough.
Mm,
Yeah, they have to. It's such a visually appealing graphic novel that they really need to get really creative with it. Very visual, very strange. They can't, and I mean, when it comes to gaming adaptations, I saw Good Omens that did a really good job. It was very quirky, very visually, strange. I think Sandman needs to kind of push that even further to be successful.
Mm. And Joanna's heading out
mm.
early to recover from traveling. Uh, have a good evening.
See you,
And
Joanna.
recently, Joanna had a video, and we had mentioned a little bit earlier about whether you picture what you're reading in your mind or if you just read. I wonder, do either of you have a visual when you read?
Yeah, I do. Or it depends on how connected I am with the book. So the more invested I am in the book, the more I can visualize. So that's usually a good indicator of whether or not enjoying a book or not is how much I can visualize. So like for example, books like First Law, Faithful and the Fallen, Dandelion Dynasty, I can picture pretty much everything. I know what those characters look like in my head. Um, and there's other books definitely don't do that. Like some series I love as well. I have a problem visualizing as well. Like Broken Earth, at times was very hard for me to visualize, and definitely parts of Malazan I couldn't visualize that much because it's so epic. How do you visualize that?
Yeah.
Some of those scenes. It's just how can you comprehend it at points?
Yeah.
That's actually a good tell. Is if you're not visualizing it, then you're not enjoying it. That's
Mm,
that's fascinating. Personally,
yeah.
I don't visualize anything. Um, I have a really hard time with specifically with characters. Places a little bit easier, but characters specifically, I have a really hard time visualizing them. That's why I usually prefer characters with a lot of depth. And I love Hob specifically because we get in Fitz's head. Um, it's not really about what Fitz looks like; it's more about what Fitz does and what he thinks. I really appreciate that. But when it comes to actual picturing characters, I tend to associate a character with a like a movie star or an actor or something. That makes it a little bit easier.
Hmm.
It's kind of tough whenever um, then suddenly a character is described as being something that doesn't look at all like that because I keep picturing them as that actor. That's happened a couple times. It's like, oh, they have this. They're a redhead. Surprise! It's like, what? Like I read half of this book and that was never mentioned once. So then that I don't know peeves me off a little bit. I rather books not describe their characters at all because it does not help me. I
Yeah.
rather make an assumption in my head, associate an actor or someone someone that I know what they look like with that character, than have the book tell me exactly what someone looks like. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And reading Rainbow had an interesting question. Does audio versus physical affect how much you visualize?
That's interesting. Yeah, I think it does. I think I find it easier to visualize physical. I mean, audio I can obviously visualize that as well, but I think physical I actually find easier to to visualize.
Yeah, I would say the same. The little I visualize with physical, I visualize even less with audio. If someone's telling me something, it's going over my head. I just don't have the capability to absorb it.
Yeah, it's. I wonder. I'm sure everyone's different how you know, how we, process information, whether it's by reading or hearing things. It's really interesting. I bet everyone. I'm guessing everyone's different with how they interpret everything. But I think Never really thought of it that way, but I think audio may be a little bit easier for me to visualize because it's like someone telling you a story.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm audiobooking this historical fiction standalone called Azincourt by
Hmm.
Bernard Cornwell. And I can actually visualize that a fair bit because I think it's because if it's historical fiction and you know the time period, you have a point of reference
Mm.
in your head to that time period, and you can kind of build off that. So I think it's definitely easier with. I think it might be easier with genres that are outside maybe fantasy. Um,
Hmm.
Definitely with historical fiction, I'm finding that it's a bit easier.
And there you
Yeah,
have
I,
it. And yeah.
I recently read the book Stoner, uh, and that one being it's not it's not historical fiction. It's more just classic American literature, um, but it takes place in a university, and like the time period is something that we see all the time. It takes place in the early 1900s, so it's something that you have a point of reference for that, and it takes place in a university. So those are both things that are very I know exactly what those things look like. So I can picture the main character as any professor I've had in the back in my background or in my that I've had several years ago back in college. So that's an easy one to do. But yeah, fantasy. Whenever I have to, especially something like I read Way of Kings early this year, and I thought it was really good. But something like that is almost impossible for me to picture anything
Hmm.
just because it's such a alien world. It's such a you have things like spren. What the hell is a spren? You have you have alien biology, alien flora. It's yeah, that one was a tough one for me.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. I think that's where fan art comes in handy as well.
Yeah,
Because now if you see fan art, you kind of have a point of reference now, so it makes it a lot easier. So I think for those bigger series like Stormlight, where there's a lot of fan art out there, it can sometimes be a bit easier to
yeah.
to visualize it.
Fan art was that was a huge help.
Mm.
Hmm.
And once again, fan casting. I
Yeah.
I do the same for my own books, the stuff that I write. I have a Pinterest account just for that, where I attach certain actors or certain photos of places,
Hmm.
to what I'm trying to picture. It makes it easier for me to describe the things.
Yeah. I think that's an
Mm.
interesting part. I think that's why fan casting is a thing for books. People are harder to visualize, so we drop someone who we think fits into the role.
Yeah. I used to do that because I used to read thrillers a lot, like crime thrillers.
Mm.
Um, and that's what I would do as well. I found it easier then to like fan cast people in my head, and then you would find out you would read these novels and you would fan cast the same people. So it's like, and then
Hmm.
sometimes it'll start to blend together if you read enough of them.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, those action thriller stars or main characters tend to be very samey after a while,
mm,
especially for there are certain authors that have written the genre for decades, and after a while it's like yeah, you're writing the same character, even if they have different names, it's the same character.
Yeah.
yeah,
Come on, Tom Clancy, enough.
And reading Rainbow, settings you can actually have a frame of reference for it is much easier to visualize in my experience. Magical things are hard to really grasp.
mm,
Yeah, no, as it was mentioned, the fan art is
Mm.
so helpful, especially for Way of Kings. Seeing what people look
mm,
like, seeing what the sharp plates and the sharp blades and the that kind of stuff, the spren, the biology. There was at one point where he described these trees that bend with the storm, and my mind went so blank. I had no idea what he was talking about, and then I actually watched this video. I can't remember who it was. It's a big YouTuber, but they did a sort of lore breakdown on
Mm.
Stormlight. It was like a non-spoiler lore breakdown talking about the biology and the way that the world works with storms, and that was so helpful. I watched that thing and I was like, I finally understand. I finally get what's going on, and I know what to picture now.
Yeah.
I kind of wish Malazan had more fan art, because I looked at a little bit of it, but it would really help out a lot. Some fan art. Brandy said I had to look up fan art for Billy Bumbler when I was reading The Dark Tower because I just couldn't picture it.
Yeah, I'm still not sure exactly what a Billy Bumbler is. Bumbler is. I have it in my head. It's like this weird, like raccoon dog type thing. I don't know. I'm probably completely wrong on it, but that's how I picture Oi.
Have you read The Dark Tower, Christopher?
Mm-hmm.
I have not. I'm familiar with it, but no, I have not.
Have it. Yeah. And you're a fan of it, right, RJ?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big time. It's probably a top 5 series for me.
Oh wow!
I love those books. I probably have an unpopular opinion as book 7 is one of my favorites. Like it's probably my second favorite. The Dark Tower book. I just love that series, and that's the only Stephen King I've read is those 7 Dark Tower books. I'm going to be reading 11, 22, 63 in the next few weeks. I want to read different seasons. The Stand, It, Salem's Lot, all the classic King books. I really do want to get to those because I just love King's writing. Like it really stuck with me. When I was reading it.
Yeah, the 11, 22, 63 is great. Have you read that one, Christopher?
No, the only King I ever read was It, whenever I was 13, 14 years old. And it scared me so bad, I could barely finish it. But I did, even though it's a bulky guy. I really want to reread it at some point just to see, what if my memory of it rings true. But yeah, definitely when I get into more King, I want to read a lot more King, especially once I finish Elderlings. I can. I'm a little bit more free of these, larger series. I want to focus a little bit more on standalones, and I think King is a really good source of standalone books.
Mm-hmm.
And Reading Rainbow says, I visualize audio better, which makes driving while listening a bit hectic.
Oh no.
That'll do that.
Our friend PL Stewart, I think audio can really help with visualization. I'm not a huge audio fan, but the few I've listened to, I felt almost cinematic to me. I could close my eyes and feel like I was there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like if you have a vivid imagination like that, audiobook might really feel cinematic. That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
I wish it did that for me, honestly.
They used to do story time at my neighborhood library. That was amazing. My son always begs me to make up stories for him at bedtime.
I was going to ask, and this is something that I tend to ask a lot of people that I do talks with, and just because we are kind of in a very popular fantasy scape, and it's really hard to burst out of the fantasy bubble a lot of times. But I just wanted to ask, what was the most recent non-fantasy book you read that really surprised you, or that hit you in a way that a big fantasy epic hit you?
Let me get it. Do you have any, RJ?
Oh God, I can't remember the last time I've read actually a non-fantasy book. I really can't remember.
Wow.
I've just read fantasy like the last 2 years. It's pretty much been all fantasy apart from Remembrance vs. Past, like those, and Azincourt I'm reading now. That's pretty much it. Like
it's a really easy bubble to find yourself in. I went 2 years, reading nothing but fantasy, and I really needed to burst that bubble. So I tried to do other things here and there, but I mean, fantasy is still most of what I read, but it's good to get a little variety, I think.
Yeah, I'm starting to burst out of that, I think, a little bit with obviously Remembrance vs. Past and now Azincourt. Trying to get more into Stephen King. That's gonna hopefully that's me starting to branch out a bit more. you know,
I mean,
rather than
it's
sticking
tough. Fantasy's awesome. I love it.
It is, yeah. That's why we read it.
I hope so.
It's
Yeah,
just
I'd like to read
awesome.
Yeah, the last one I read, I'm not even sure why I bought this book. I forget why, but Negative Space by B.R. Yeager.
Mm, yeah.
Really, it's might be the most unsettling book I've read.
Yeah, that's on my list. I saw someone, I think it was like on TikTok, they talked about it, and I was like, oh, that sounds like something I need to read.
It is so good, so good. Yeah, I'm surprised more people don't talk about it. It creeped me out in a good way, um, but yeah, great book. Yeah, really good one. I was trying to not just get stuck in that fantasy bubble and try to mix it up a little bit, so I just kind of pulled that one off the shelf and yeah, really good. What was the last one you read, Christopher? The last non-fantasy.
It was actually Stoner, as I said. I read it earlier this year, and I was blown away. I just can't seem to stop talking about it. I already reread half of it just a couple months after reading it. Yeah, it's great. It's literally just I've never read a book that starts literally the first paragraph of the book is the main character's death. It's he literally dies and then it does a retrospective on his life, and so you know where this is leading. You know that that's the end. Um, but somehow it's gripping. It's heartbreaking. I loved it. Loved every second of it. It's very short. It's like about like 230, 250 pages. Um, yeah, I think I read it in 4 days. Fantastic.
And that's by John Williams.
John Williams, yeah.
Okay.
And I know I actually have another book like his that I really want to check out called Butcher's Block. And it's more of a Western novel, but I heard it's really, really good. Yeah, he's just a very captivating author. He reminds me a lot of Hobb in the sense that he really gets into the characters' psyches. Um, you really feel for the characters, kind of the same way you feel for Fitz. It really reminded me a lot of that.
I'm adding it to the cart right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Jimmy read that this month. I think that was his
He
Patreon
did.
pick.
That was my pick for him.
That was you?
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I got picked. Yeah, I was actually very happy. We spoke about it briefly, and he seemed to really get a lot out of it as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, he does something that I really love in the sense of not being able to really picture people's features and the way that they look. He tends to describe people in very poetic roundabout ways, but for me that works. I can't think of any at the top of my head, but yeah, he just really knows how to describe the essence of a person without going into the physical details. I really, really like that.
I bet that's a lot harder than it sounds to do.
I bet.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Scott, he's gonna have to bounce for the evening, but a few thoughts as always. Thanks for shining a light on creators. Thank you, Scott, for the kind words. Christopher, I'm not sure when I'll be able to pick it up, but I at least grabbed your book on Kindle in audio format, and will immersively read that when I can.
Oh, much appreciated.
And RJ, my boy, Blue.
Yeah. Scott's a great guy.
Yeah, he's really great.
He's good. Yeah.
Brandy, I'm with you, RJ. Book 7 is my second favorite after Wizard and Glass. Yeah, so what's your second favorite, RJ?
Oh, what was my favorite? Drawing of the Three. So book 2.
That's good.
Yeah, nothing tops that for me. In Dark Tower, it was just getting introduced to those characters. The content was just brilliant. I love that book.
It's a good one.
I know you DNF'd it.
I did, yeah. I DNF'd it
at Wizard and Glass.
Yeah. I can't say too much about it. I don't want to spoil anything, but there's some directions the story goes into that I just didn't make sense for me. It just wasn't into. I'm sure RJ, you probably know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But, yeah. But I get why people like it. I just not my cup of tea.
Yeah, totally fair.
I got a lot of grief over that. So but it's a hard series to continue on because the books are so huge that it's hard to continue out 1,000 pages of a
Yeah,
book.
absolutely.
Jerry says I've read and reread multiple times King's Chonkers, It, The Stand. They're so great. And the last, my most recently non-fantasy was science fiction reread of The Martian. I keep hearing how great that book is.
Yeah, I need to read that. I've only heard good things, and I love the movie. The movie was really good.
Yeah, that was a really good movie. Reading Rainbow, science sci-fi is just fantasy with rivets.
Yeah, I really need to get more into sci-fi as well. I mean, fantasy, once again, it's a hard bubble to burst, but I did, there's some overlap here and there. I did read The Expanse up to book 6, which was, I really liked it. I know that 7, 8, and 9 are kind of their own little trilogy at the tail end. So I'm saving them for a rainy day, but it's a very, very, very easy series to just binge through. It's very easy reading, but very gripping. And then recently I read Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K., which also kind of blew me away. Very short read, about 200 pages, but yeah, her writing is incredible. Never read anything like it.
About halfway through Leviathan Wakes now, so
Oh, nice.
it's
Just
really,
getting started.
yeah, really easy to read, really smooth
Yeah.
read.
Have you read them, RJ?
I haven't. No, I'm going to be reading them hopefully soon. At some point this year, I'll be starting Leviathan Wakes.
Nice.
Yeah, since I've got into sci-fi, or I've started reading sci-fi, so there's a lot I want to read. There's a book, House of Suns by Alistair Reynolds. I really want to read that. Like the premise of that sounds really cool. So hopefully I'll get to that at some point soon. But that list is just too long at the moment. There's so many books you want to get to, especially now when you're diversifying. It just opens up a ton of more books, and it's a problem.
Too many books.
Yeah, we are discussing Leviathan Wakes on the 16th. So, Christopher, if you want to join us for that one.
Oh yeah, I would love to. Wait, 16? I'll get back to you.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
But yeah, that sounds awesome. I love that book. I love the pivot the series takes after that, just because I mean, Leviathan Wakes, as you've read, it's almost a detective story. You have that detective story element, the mystery, the investigations. How I mean, without spoiling it, but how it goes from that to this massive sci-fi epic. It's masterful. It's so good.
and Kevin Jenkins. Yeah.
Book 6 was the last book I read, and it was my favorite. So 5 and 6 were my favorites.
Did you see the adaptation?
I did. It was really good.
Yeah, I was a little lost at the end because I had to. We all watched it together and we're like, what? We're confused. So we had to. I think if you read the series, you probably had a better idea of what was going on.
Yeah, I actually finished book 6 right before season 6 aired. So it was literally just I'm talking like days before. So it was literally just reliving everything that had happened. And I think it made a little bit more sense to me, having read the book, but I can see it's a little confusing.
Yeah. Yeah. I almost pulled
I think the books are better, to be honest. But the series did a pretty decent job.
Yeah. Kevin Jenkins. Oh, RJ is here. I know.
It's Kevin being Kevin.
Reading Augustus by John Williams. It's good, but very different from the other two.
Yeah, I want to read more John Williams, especially after Stoner. Yeah, definitely someone to keep an eye on.
Reading Rainbow. I think the last science fiction fantasy was called The Wild. I loved it.
That was mandatory reading back in I think middle school in Italy. That's the Jack London book, right?
I think so. Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
And
There's so many books that were mandatory reading back in middle school and high school, and only a few really stuck with me. Were there any that you guys remember from like middle school or high school that you still fondly recall, or were they all just homework?
Um, I actually really enjoyed We Did Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. I actually really enjoyed that one.
That's a great book.
That was actually a really good book. And like I look back on it fondly now. I think at the time I didn't love the book, but I didn't hate it either. So for 16-year-old me, that was you know that was best case scenario.
I loved Catcher in the Rye. I love that book. That was a fun memory for me. I'm not sure how I'd like it now, but at the time I thought it was great.
I think for me it was Frankenstein. I love Frankenstein. I loved it back when it was assigned in school, and I loved it even more rereading it out of school. But yeah, that's a fantastic book. It still holds up.
Mhm.
Darius says, I don't remember my last non SFF read, but my next one will be The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks.
Wait, what do I? That sounds really familiar. I think it was made into a series, if I'm not mistaken, like a TV show.
Let's see. It's by Rebecca Skloot. Is that right, Derry? And there is Leviathan Weeks on your TBR, or Jay?
Yeah, it is. It's on there now, or it's on the whatever the TBR is. It's just a list, and books exist on it. We don't know what books exist on it. That they change from time to time. So
Yeah.
yeah, like the only thing I know for certain is the book I'm reading next. Like after that, it's anything can happen. So
Ronnie, I enjoyed Brave New World in high school and Flowers of the Algernon. Those stuck with me.
Yeah, I read Flowers in high school. That was intense. It's
I
very
haven't
dark.
read that one, yeah. And our friend Taylor's here. Hey, Taylor. Ooh, Catching the Rye. Not Catching the Rye. I hate that book so much. I get that a lot, and then I wonder, I should probably reread that. I should probably stop saying that to people. I just give it another read.
Yeah, I was very lucky. I actually took a graphic novel class, and we got to read a lot of graphic novels. So that actually kind of ignited a love for the medium. But I mean, we read a lot of the bigger ones like Watchmen, V for Vendetta, that sort of stuff. But, that's hence having read a lot of Alan Moore. But we did read a few others that were really interesting. Like I don't know if you're familiar with Blankets. Um, that one was pretty good. Great art style, a little moody, but not bad. But yeah, that was a really fun class. I like those. That there's an option for alternative styles of reading in
Oh, yeah.
reading classes in certain high schools or early college.
I'm surprised you read Blankets in high school.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
It's a little heavy.
yeah, it's a little spicy.
We also read what was the one? What is it? It's Pride of Baghdad. That's another
Hmm,
one we read. Oh, that's intense.
really?
It's a short read, but it's rough.
Hmm.
Highly highly recommended. It's very good.
Well, now I have to read it. Add it to the list. Derry, oh Lord, I had to read Rebecca and Animal Farm for school and ruined both of them. Henry Delax is the woman who had her extraordinary cells taken out without her
Yes,
consent, and since formed the basis for almost all modern pharmaceuticals.
that's where I knew it from.
Interesting story. Yeah, it sounds like an interesting story. I was made to read the Great. I was made. I was made to read Great Expectations in high school, and I actually quite liked it. Really liked the accented dialogue.
One of my wife's favorite books is The Great Gatsby, and I had to read that in school, and I hated it. So that's a point of contention for us. I feel like I need to reread it out of a school setting because I don't think I don't know, a very fun book when you have to write papers about it.
Yeah. I wonder if some of these books we would have enjoyed if we didn't have if it wasn't an obligation, if it was just for fun. I wonder if it would change our enjoyment at all.
Also, just
Yeah.
diversifying the catalog a little bit might be interesting. Not just do classical literature that's Western classical literature, and just expanding it to non-Western, expanding it to genre fiction. Um, why not read The Lord of the Rings? Why it's a
Yeah.
classic.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh, good. Good. I'm not alone. I love Catching the Rye as well. Good. I'm not. I was say, oh no, not you too. Oh, and To Kill a Mockingbird was phenomenal mandatory reading.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we had to read To Kill Mockingbird as well, and I did not love it.
Yeah.
But once again, it's really hard to enjoy something when it's work and not
Mhm.
for fun.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Especially when you're a teenager. It's just when people make you do things, it's like, no,
Yeah.
no, I'm not doing that. You just, you're
Oh yeah.
just rebellious.
Oh yeah. I mean, even reading. I used to love reading as a little kid, um, into my tweens, and then it got to the point where my dad wouldn't allow us to play video games on Sundays, and that was only like it was a reading day, and it made reading the most miserable experience. And so they just make reading fun for your kids. Don't make it a chore. Don't make it something that you have to do in place of something else that they would rather be doing, because then it's not fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough one. I think leading by example is good because if they see you reading, they'll want to read too.
Yeah.
Derry, one of my favorite booktube series is the Naughty Librarian series of drunk classics. So much fun. The drunk Great Gatsby had me in fits. Have to check that out.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
I unpopularly loved the reading of the Iliad and the Odyssey, and also the Aeneid.
I wouldn't say that's unpopular. I love those, and having grown up in Italy and going to school there, those are mandatory readings. I think we read the Odyssey in fifth grade, and then in middle school we read the Iliad and Aeneid, and I love them. I was obsessed with them. I actually had a notebook, and I don't know. I was obsessed with the storytelling via epic poem. So I would just like write my own epic poetry that sucked. Try to tell like a very classic Greek style story, but um, yeah, that's a very hard way to write, especially for a kid. But yeah, I love the Odyssey. I thought it was awesome. We also had to read uh, Dante, Inferno, and
Mm.
Purgatory, and Paradise, and um, I loved Inferno. The other two, not so much, but you know, hell is more fun than
Yeah.
Purgatory and Paradise.
Have you read that?
Yeah.
Have you read the Odyssey, RJ?
No. No. The only epic poem we've read that I read in school was Beowulf.
Hmm.
And the reason actually for that is so Seamus Heaney, who did the I think he's one of the more famous ones for translating the Beowulf. He lived not too far from me. He was born in a village about 20 minutes away from me. And I actually got to meet him like a few years before he died. I met
Hmm.
him
Oh,
like he
whoa.
came to our school when I was like 12 or 13, and yeah, we got to meet him. He was a very big Irish language speaker. I went to an Irish speaking school growing up, so I knew a bit of Irish, and I was talking in Irish to him a little bit. And when he died, I we had like a big eulogy for him at our school, and I read one of his poems out basically to the whole school. So, um, sorry, that's just a cool story that I have
Yeah, that's awesome.
um, about Shivasini.
Wow.
Um, I appreciate that a lot more now since I've got into fantasy and I've got into reading a lot more. Something I look back on that I did appreciate it, I think, a bit at the time, but I definitely appreciate it a lot more now. So,
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah, Beowulf is it's proto fantasy epic. it's awesome. I love Beowulf. I
Hmm.
wish I read it back in Italy. I actually wonder what the Italian translation is like. It kind of makes me want to pick it up just to see if it compares at all to the English. But yeah, we pretty much, when it comes to epics in the Italian curriculum, we stuck with the ones closer to us, the Greek epics and Italian epics. I did read
Hmm.
Beowulf in America though.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, it was part of the high school curriculum.
Hmm. That's a great story, RJ.
Hmm.
Reading rainbows. In our classes, we had to read aloud as a class and make sure that we paid attention. The teacher would make each student read a paragraph, and she randomly called on you. That took the enjoyment out of it. Yeah,
Yeah, we did that. We had that as well.
yeah, because you're
You've,
always
you've,
worried that you're next. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that is not a very fun way to read.
No,
Mhm.
no, not at all. Taylor says I was supposed to read the Odyssey. Spark Notes saved me in those days. Oh, yeah. I still want to read Tolkien's translation of
Mhm.
Beowulf.
I've heard that's really good. It's more of
Hmm.
a prose translation, if I'm right,
I didn't realize he wrote
rather
one.
than rather than a poem, which I think is
Oh,
what
interesting.
Shibasini did.
Hmm. The Fagel's translation for the Iliad and the Odyssey are great. There is also some great audio out there too. I did audio out there. The local legend. I got to meet with Sir Edmund Hillary, who reached the top of Mount Everest first. Lovely bloke. That's an
That's
accomplishment.
a yeah, that's a cool person to meet.
Yeah. Oh, that brings me on to another cool story. So the village that I grew up, there was a girl from there. She was the first Irish woman to climb Everest. Um,
Wow.
and she came to our school after that, and we just she just chatted about her experience um, going up. So
Oh,
again,
for a small village, everyone comes from there. That's awesome.
yeah,
What
yeah,
a
it's
great
crazy.
pool of people.
Just people do random stuff, and it's like, oh, you know.
That's awesome.
If you have a chance to talk to someone who's climbed Mount Everest, I mean, plant yourself there and talk to them because what a. I mean, I'm sure they have some wild stories.
Mhm.
I love classics. Reread Beowulf a couple of months ago, working my way through the sagas and Icelanders now. Did
Mhm.
you read Northlanders, Christopher, the comic? No, Brian
Uh,
Wood.
I'm familiar with it though, but no, I have not read it.
Yeah,
Actually, I
another.
really want to get back into graphic novels. It's been quite a while. I kind of shifted to manga a little bit. I've been reading through things like One Piece. Everyone talks about One Piece. I know. It's great though. I read a little bit of Berserk, which is also really, really good. Though it's not for everyone. It's very grim, very dark. And then I read recently. I read this one called "To Your Eternity." It's more of a newer manga, but it was recommended to me as like a fantasy epic, and yeah, it delivered. It's a little bit smaller scale than what I was expecting, but it's um, very interesting, very intriguing.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it
hear a
was.
lot of people.
Yeah, it's very good. The reason why I read it too is the sequel to Seasons that I'm currently writing. Someone had described this manga, and it sounded way close to what I was writing. I was like, okay, I need to read this to see if it's too close. It was not, but the way it was described, I was like, oh my, wait a minute, what's going on?
Do you have a moment of panic there? That
Yeah, a little bit. The red flags were going off. The alarm was going off in my head. I was like, oh, did I copy someone without intending to? No, I didn't.
Mhm.
and I recommend Saga, the graphic novel. I haven't read that one yet. I keep hearing it. Well, I read the first couple issues and just didn't grab me.
Yeah, yeah, Saga's pretty good. Another one I would recommend is for fantasy fans is Bone.
Hmm.
Really, really good.
Oh yeah,
Bone is fantastic.
yeah. And he doesn't get the credit he deserved for all he did afterwards. He funded building hospitals and schools in Nepal, so Sherpas who helped everyone else could lift their living standards.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I keep hearing about Berserk, so one of these I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I mean, you have to really be in the mood. It's quite it's the definition of grimdark.
Nice.
It's as grimdark gets. I don't know. I'm sure there's darker stuff out there, but it's because it's a visual medium. It's it's right in front of you. You can't not imagine it.
Yeah. Well, cool. I know that the time just always flies on Friday, so I apologize for keeping you guys too long. But just we get talking and the time just goes. But well, first, Christopher, before we go, when can we be expecting the second book?
Oh, I have no idea. I'm really hoping beginning of next year is kind of the goal, maybe January or February. But having a full-time job, it's really hard to to really dedicate the necessary time to writing it. But both my wife and I, we have full-time jobs. So unlike when we wrote Seasons, which we wrote it in like 5 months.
Yeah.
This one is it's much longer. It's over twice the size at this point. So yeah, we're excited to deliver it to the people that want to read it. But as for timing, it's really hard to say.
I'm just want to get my little mitts on it, so
You'll
pressure.
be one of the first.
Yeah. No pressure. Yeah. I always feel bad when I want to I want to read it, but of course when it happens, and I'll be ready when it does. But these things take time. So Christopher, where's the best place for people to connect with you if they want to learn more about you or about your work?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I'm very active. I like to talk about books. I make a lot of memes. I don't just talk about my writing. I like to have fun. You can find me on Twitter. It's at Chris R. Warman. Yeah, that's probably the best place to find me.
Cool. And I'll link your website down below too.
Awesome. Thank you.
And RJ, where can people connect with you? Where's the best place?
So probably if you're on Discord, I have my own server. It's called the Grimoire Discord. It's a collaboration between me, Baron from Your Brain on Books, Theo from Rekindled Reader, and Alex from Talk Guy Reads. So that's probably the best place to find me. But I'm also on Twitter at rjgibson2806 and same for Instagram as well. So
nice. Well, I want to thank both of you for. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was going to ask, do you do like Bookstagram, or is it just a personal Instagram?
It's basically a personal Instagram. I just tell people what I'm reading.
Nice.
So it's kind of a Bookstagram, but I don't put much effort into it. So, it's
an interesting medium for books. I know people that do it very well, but I bet it's tough to keep up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is tough to those guys.
Yeah. Takes a lot of effort. Yeah, a lot more creative than I am. So credit to them.
Yeah.
But I want to thank both of you for coming by and hanging out and just shooting the breeze. Really appreciate it. And of course, thanks to everyone who came by in the chat just to interact with us and ask questions. It's always funner when we have the interaction. And we hope all of you have a great weekend. And we will see everybody soon.
Thank you all.
Bye, guys.